Today I feel it's really sort of a sense of urgency and more there's a sense of, of a critical practicality to the Torah because we need to do something about climate change and basically save the climate and let the earth rest. Interestingly, Parshat Behar, this week's Parsha, talks about the sabbatical year, or what's called the Shemitah year. And we'll get into that more in detail. But before I jump into the Slonimer, my dear friend Pinny, who's one of the student leaders of the local chapter of the global climate strike that was begun by Greta Thunberg of Sweden, called me to ask for help with the climate strike that they're planning for this Friday. And I wanted to share with you the details of that and encourage you to go and join the strike. I actually have um, the flyers right here. Join the global climate strike on March. Actually, it's on Friday, March 24th. We strike again. You see it there on the bottom. And let me tell you the details. So. It is in Nyack. If you're in the New York area, come up to Nyack. It's going to be at the Veteran Park Gazebo on Main Street in Nyack. Can't miss it. If it's like a hop and a skip from Broadway in Maine, like smack in the center of Nyack. And the rally is from 12 to 1. There'll be speakers. Unfortunately, I cannot be there because I have another commitment. I'll be there in spirit, and I'll be there for the future rallies, but not this one. But I encourage you to go. 12 o'clock on Friday, 12 to 1 is the rally. And then the strike will continue about 4 p.m., bring signs, and let us make a difference. And what I'd like to share with us in this session of our Cyber Yeshiva, our cyber study, is a take from Torah, from Jewish mythology and spirituality and wisdom, on how important, how crucial, and how spiritually crucial it is to bring about this change. The change is beyond saving the planet. It's really about saving our souls. And here we go. So in the Parsha, the quote that is relevant is Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe behar Sinai lemor. And God spoke to Moses at the mountain of Sinai, saying, Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the people of Israel, ve'amarta elehem, and say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lachem, when you come to the land that I give to you. And again, just for those of you who are coming in and without a lot of background, so this is God speaking to Moses at Mount Sinai, which is in the desert of Sinai, and they are on their way from Egypt. They have just left Egypt and they're wandering in the wilderness. They're on their way back to the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, which later becomes the land of Israel. And they're stopping at the foot of Mount Sinai. They're receiving the Torah. And this is one of the many details of the Torah, this constitution, right? This agreement, which is really the covenant. It's sort of like the contract that the people of Israel are entering into, the spiritual contract to live at a standard, a spiritual standard that is demanding, spiritual. It's high, and it has a lot of details. And one of the details are V'shavta haaretz Shabbat laAdonai. you will let the land rest as a Sabbath to God. In other words, you let the land rest not only as a utilitarian, sort of crop rotating, let the land rest and replenish, but really this is a spiritual act, spiritual practice. And the question is why? What's so spiritual about, we want to save the planet, we want to save, mitigate climate change, because it's our personal interest. We want to survive. We want weather to be balanced. We don't want to be struck with enormous 100-year storms every other year. We're taking care of ourselves, but there's also not only of our bodies, and sure, this is a survival issue, but this is Shabbat LaAdonai. This is a resting, a land management that in its essence is also spiritual. It's about also saving our souls. And that's the quote. And it will continue to discuss the details of the Shemitah year, of the sabbatical year. And just to recap that, the people are asked every seventh year to not let the land lay fallow, not to work it. Let nature, run its course, because we were, at that time, this is the beginning of the agricultural era in human development. And we have developed the tools for cultivating the land. And the instruction here is use those tools for 6 years. On the 7th year, cease. Well, how do we eat, you may ask? And the Torah goes into the details of that. So the Slonimer asks the following question. צריך ביאור עניינה המיוחד של מצוות שמיטה. We need to understand, in other words, he's saying, I'm curious here about why the mitzvah, the instruction of Shemitah, is so unique. וכדכתיב בתוכחה בפרשת בחוקותיי, as it is written in a tochacha is a rebuke or a warning. So in Parshat Bechukotai, there's a long list of what will happen if you live by the spiritual instructions of the Torah, the mitzvot, and what will happen if you do not obey. And oh my God, you don't want to read that list because you're not going to sleep well at night. It's all, all the maladies and afflictions and disasters that are listed there are really horrible. And it says specifically here about Shemitah, "V'haita artzachem shmama," and your land will be barren. "V'arechem iyu charava," and your cities will be destroyed. "Az tireh haaretz et shabbatotea," and then the land will reclaim its Sabbaths. And this is the Sabbath for the land, the Shemitah year. Kol yemei hashama. Et asher lo shavta b'shabtotchem b'shiftachem alea. So it's saying that for all the time that you have worked the earth and not let the earth rest, that time will accumulate, says the Torah. The more you go without letting the earth rest, the greater the consequence, because the earth is going to reclaim, in some kind of great fashion, its opportunity to rest. So, in other words, do the math. If you don't let it rest deliberately, consciously, out of a controlled, managed practice every seventh year, so after so many years, what will happen is that it's going to accumulate, and you're going to have years of the earth reclaiming its due rest by having your cities be destroyed and the earth going wild. Wild meaning barren. בתוכחה נכתבו רק חטאים כלליים ולא חטאים פרטיים. So now he's saying, notice that if you go and read in Parshat Bechukotai the whole long rebuke and warning about what will happen if you don't fulfill the spiritual instructions of the Torah, there's only one mitzvah that's mentioned in particular. Everything else is general. All the mitzvot, if you don't fulfill them, there will be consequences. But the only mitzvah in this long rebuke that's mentioned specifically, for which the consequences are specific, is the Shemitah year. והחטא הפרטי היחיד שנכתב הוא החטא שלא שמרו שמיטה. שמשום כך, והייתה ארצכם שממה ועריכם היא החרבה. So you see that there's something about the Shemitah year, is saying the Slonimer, that makes it unique among all the instructions of the Torah, which is counterintuitive, especially to us who are now, really most Jews are now kind of urban dwellers, and it's a far cry from the days that we lived on the land and farmed the land of Israel and lived in this sort of integrated fashion of being close to the earth. And I mean, the Torah and the later books of the Hebrew Bible are all about that. Yes, we had the days in our past that we read about where we were primarily an agricultural society, and a lot of the the mythic stories and the laws and the whole the roots of our culture is in an existence that was very close to the land, but now we're not. So intuitively we think, it's like you don't go to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur if you don't do a Passover Seder, you'll have consequences if you want to get into this simplistic, transgression and consequences. If you're, if you steal, but not letting the earth, letting the earth lay fallow for a year it's not intuitive to us. But the Torah points out, in fact, this is a unique mitzvah that has considered in the Torah as one that, if we do not follow, the consequences are much more particular. And it's also unique in other ways. That will be material for another lesson. It also compares it to the three mitzvot that one should, three other mitzvot that one should never transgress, even if, even at the risk to one's life, which is idol worship, sexual improprieties, and murder. Those three are on a higher level of transgression for not transgressing even at the risk of one's life. And so is the Shemitah year. So what is that about? Asks the Slonimer. How come the Shemitah year is so gravely considered? And he continues, V'hinei chtiv, and this is here it is written, and this is a quote from the Psalms, Psalm 119 to be precise. Kol mitzvotecha emunah, nishmat kol haTorah v'kol hamitzvot hi ha'emunah. So the Psalm says, all your instructions, God, have to do with trust, with developing the capacity to trust. And we're talking about a spiritual trust. We're talking about, emunah is also translated as belief, but we're going to go here with emunah as trust. And this is trusting that the higher dimension, God, the spiritual context for our lives is more solid, it's more meaningful, it's more instructive, it's more real, in a sense, than our limited perception of the reality around us. And it's a challenge. It's not an easy concept. It's not a choice of, oh, I believe in God or don't believe in God. But can I really put myself in a place of like the spiritual calling is long-term much more reliable than immediate gratification or what seems as like security in secure or solid in in our ordinary existence. And he continues to say, Nishmat kol haTorah v'chol hamitzvot hi ha'emunah. So the soul of the Torah and all of its instructions is that trust. Hashoresh haklali shel kol hamitzvot hu inyan emunah. The root, the core root, the general root of all the mitzvot, of all the spiritual instructions in the Torah, has to do with trust, with that spiritual trust, emunah. Umilvad ze yesh lechol mitzvah, but also every mitzvah has its own particular purpose, something that's unique to that mitzvah. So the general purpose of all mitzvot is trust, but every mitzvah also has its particular service, particular task. And you could also think of a particular benefit, right, to us. And you can see where he's leading. He's leading to, therefore, the Shemitah year, the practice of laying the land fallow. And I get that this is not in our kishkes because I'm not going to go out tomorrow to work the land. This is not a mitzvah that's under my control. And this is important because this is something that we now need to do as a society. This is a policy, this is a paradigm that for those of us who are spiritual practitioners, and particularly in the Jewish faith, the Shemitah year is not a personal mitzvah, it's a collective mitzvah. And that will bring us back to climate change and to the climate strike. So we'll bring that around in a moment. You can probably see where this is going. But let me continue here with Slonimer. He's going to now talk about what is the particular purpose of the Shemitah year that's relevant to this discussion. Gilui ha'emunah shaya behar Sinai hu shoresh kol hamitzvot. So the spiritual ascent, Gilui ha'emunah, this revelation of spiritual trust that became available at the foot of Mount Sinai when the Torah was revealed to us. Hu shoresh kol hamitzvot. This is the root of all the instructions of the Torah. This is what mitzvot are about. It's all a practice in developing trust in a higher reality, in the higher order. Imagine expanding oneself into that kind of consciousness, right? I mean, I walk out. In fact, people who are saintly, people that we've met in our lives, you can sense that trust in them. They don't get so anxious about the little details of life because they know that it's all for greater good. Like, know it. It's not an intellectual principle. It's not a philosophical understanding. It's like, I trust. I'm okay. What a beautiful, beautiful place to be in as we develop and we get reclaim a little bit more of that every day, every year. That is the spiritual work. And that is the core of the whole enterprise of the Torah, the whole mitzvot, the whole system of spiritual practices that come from the Torah. Ach miyuchedet mitzvat shmita, shehi hasi b'madrigat ha'emunah. But the mitzvah of Shemitah is unique in that way because it is the pinnacle of the mitzvot that teach us trust. There's no greater mitzvah that is a practice in finding that equanimity, that spiritual trust, that big picture, higher order seeing. Bivchinat emunat ha'evarim. And he's referring to a Hasidic concept that says that there are three levels of faith, or three levels of trust in Hashem, in God. One is trust of the mind. At that level, I decide, it's belief, I decide that I trust, I accept the whole principle, I take it as truth. There's the trust or the faith of the heart. I feel it. You know, I believe I have this capacity where I trust, my heart is open to it, and I also love it. I'm invested in that. It's not just theory, it's like I really feel it. And then there's emunat ha'evarim. There's the faith of the body. It's in my bones. I know it because it's vibrating in every cell of my body. It's embodied. Asher Yehudi notesh shana shlema et sadehu makom michyato mimena kol parnasat beito. As here, a Jew, or any person for that matter, who would practice this, leaves their field, their source of sustenance, the source of the sustenance, of their sustenance and their whole house's sustenance, leaves it, detaches from it, ve'eno vedba, af she'eno yodea me'echan yochal, and does not work it, even though he or she does not know where their next meal will come from. How are they going to put money in the bank? How are they going to be food on the table? Imagine you left your job without a severance package and without unemployment benefits. And you just walked out into the world and said, I'm taking a year where I'm going to trust that sustenance is going to come. And all of this because there's a clarity of trust in the universe's providence, in Hashem's providence. So here the Slonimer lays it out for us. This is the mitzvah where the rubber hits the road. This is it, folks. The Shemitah year is the highest practice of full trust. Now that is spiritual attainment. That is a level. So now let's look at where we live, at our condition here on Earth in 2019, where the climate crisis is just barreling towards us. What happened? We lost trust. We have been working 24/7 since the Industrial Revolution, perhaps, if one wants to analyze the evolution of where we're at today, to make life better. So, clothing is cheaper and housing is more convenient and more secure, and transportation is unbelievably amazing. And we've gotten into this panic mode, into this obsession compulsion of technological advancement. And what did we forget? We forget to let nature, the world, the system within which we are operating, have its due time to rest. We forgot our origins. We forgot that we're capable of drawing sustenance. We know it because our ancestors did, without exploiting and polluting and poisoning, out of this mania, this manic progress, as it were, we forgot. We forgot that that's not us. We forgot that if we don't give back to nature, if we don't let nature run itself, because we don't control her and heal itself and replenish itself, we're killing ourselves, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're shooting our soul right smack in the heart, because that's where we come from. There's a higher order, and we're not interacting with the higher order. We are in a control freak compulsion and obsession. And the Torah warned us that the earth is going to reclaim its Sabbath. It's going to reclaim its sanity, and it's going to reclaim its needs. Gaia needs to rest. Gaia needs to breathe. We cannot be a cancer of technology on the planet that inhabits us, that we're charged to actually tend to. So the spiritual practice here is not to go back to the good old days of pre-agriculture or even early agriculture. The practice here is to bring consciousness into progress. And therefore we need to have a Shemitah for climate. We have to have a Shemitah for climate. We have to have a Sabbath for climate. We have to strike. Strike, not like violently strike. This is not karate. I'm striking my opponent. But have a Sabbath. Cease. Pause. Breathe in. So that's the blessing that I offer myself and all of us. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me for this lesson on the Shemitah year and on climate change. For those of you who just joined us, I want to remind you that, as I did at the beginning of this video, that this Friday is another climate strike. This is the global climate strike that was started by Greta Thunberg, I believe, from Sweden, and my beautiful friend Pinny from Muncie. Pinny, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but he's a chassid from Muncie who has a passion for Shemitah. He's a passion for the earth and for sanity and for environmental balance, for both our spiritual and our physical sake. And here's a flyer for the Nyack. If you are in Nyack, New York, please join us for the climate strike this Friday afternoon. It's going to happen at the gazebo at Veteran Park on Main Street in Nyack. From 12 to 1, there's going to be a rally and then strike until 4 o'clock. I'm Rabbi Reuben Modik with Makom Halev community here in Nyack and Hebrew Learning Circles. If you're in the area, drop by or drop a note. Otherwise, please, let's continue the conversation. Write a comment below. Give us a like, thumbs up, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a pleasure to share Torah with you. Thank you. There is a movement. There is a revolution and an evolution. You and I are part of it. Let's make it happen. Wishing you an amazing day. Also, check us out on the website. So it's HebrewLearningCircles.org. makom-halev.org. Keep in touch. Come back for more. We're going to be teaching here in our cyber yeshiva almost every day. For now, shalom.